Welcome to Let's Be Better. We believe that our greatest responsibility as a society is to give every child the nurturing guidance they deserve. When moms, dads, all of us show up with our best, children can thrive. This mission was born from a hard truth. Too often, systems meant to protect families end up dividing them. But this podcast isn't about what's broken. It's about who we can become. It's about grace for ourselves and for each other. It's about reclaiming what truly matters. It's about faith, the belief that even in a complicated world, ordinary people can come together and create extraordinary change. Let's be better. Let's live inspired. Let's break cycles, build bridges, and raise the next generation with love, intentionality, and purpose. Something is happening to our children. Several statistics for teenagers are not just slightly up, they're way up. Anxiety, depression, self-harm, suicide. This didn't happen by accident. In just over a decade, childhood was quietly rewired. Free play replaced with screens. Exploration replaced with algorithms. And kids were handed devices more powerful than any tool in human history before their brains were ready for it. As a father, this hit me hard. Because loving our kids doesn't mean giving them everything they want. Sometimes it means being willing to be unpopular today so that they can be healthy tomorrow. In today's episode, we're breaking down the research behind this crisis, drawing from the work of Jonathan Haidt and the anxious generation to explain what changed, why it matters, and what parents can actually do about it. This isn't about fear. It's about responsibility. Childhood is not meant to be lived online, and it's not too late to bring it back to earth. Welcome to the Let's Be Better podcast, where we strive to align our faith and our habits in ways that help us become the best versions of who we can be, for ourselves, for our families, and for our society. Every week, we're going to tackle stuff head on, and we're going to keep it real, because we want to be better, and we're hoping you want to be better too. On today's show, we're going to review one of the most important books I've ever read, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. Before we jump in, let's recognize a couple of things. Especially today, being a teacher, a coach, a parent, it can be difficult work to work with kids. And even more difficult is being one of these kids. We've got two massive problems. Overprotective parenting. More on that in a bit. Technology has fractured our attention and fundamentally altered how we connect. With our kids, with each other, and even with ourselves. In The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt does a masterful, a phenomenal job of sharing the evidence, the truth, and not blaming any one of us. He rallies us to protect our teenagers and tells us what we already know. Whatever we tolerate today, our children will inherit the consequences. Parents and educators knew something was wrong way before they could explain it. Anxiety was rising. Sleep was disappearing. Kids were withdrawing, but we hadn't named the cause. This book does. A phone-based childhood replaced a play-based childhood. Now, I didn't read this book as a researcher or as a host. I read it as a father, thinking about my eldest. It changed the way I see things. I can see that we're looking down the barrel of a weapon, and it's locked and loaded on my teenager, on all of our teenagers, on all of our children, on those who, from a marketing dollars perspective, share the greatest lifetime value. And today's show is not about blame. It's about clarity and leadership. And the numbers are in, and we're going to look at them. First, we're going to talk about overprotective parenting. We all love our kids so much. Do you love anything more than your kids? I mean, because of that love, we try to remove danger. We intervene early. We supervise too much, some of us constantly. Some of us always trying to smooth out the rough edges. And while we're overprotecting them, we forgot something. Childhood is not supposed to be as safe as possible. It's supposed to be as safe as necessary. Childhood shouldn't be a bubble. It should be a training ground. A lot less about eliminating risk and a lot more about preparing children for the real world. The real world where it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Kids don't need shields. They need experience. So let's let the deeper question be asked. How are we actually designed? Not philosophically, but scientifically. What drives us? What shapes us under pressure? And here I'll paraphrase and add my faith, but the science is clear. God designed us with two internal systems that help us adapt quickly to a changing world. One system turns on when we sense opportunity, what researchers call discover mode. The other activates when we sense danger, defend mode. Here's where this really matters. Discover mode, the system that fuels curiosity, courage, creativity, and growth, it doesn't come from screens. It's born in free play, in scraped knees, in unstructured playtime, risk, boredom, imagination, real-world problem-solving. Discover mode is the posture of a healthy life. Defend mode is different. Defend mode is constantly scanning for threats. It narrows our thinking. It breeds anxiety, cynicism, and pessimism. And when childhood becomes phone-based, when exploration is replaced by scrolling and comparison, defend mode becomes the default. So we end up raising children who are hyper-aware, hyper-connected, and underexperienced. This is not a failure of kids. It's a failure of the environment we built around them. I'm going to read here from Jonathan's book. So, in the late 1980s, a grand experiment was launched in the Arizona desert. Biosphere 2 was, and still is, the largest attempt to build a closed artificial ecosystem as a prelude to, someday, building self-sustaining ecosystems in outer space. So the goal was never reached. The complexity of biological interactions among species and social interactions among humans proved to be too much, but a great deal was learned from the multiple failures. For instance, many of the trees they planted to create a rainforest ecosystem grew rapidly, but then fell over before reaching maturity. The designers had not realized that young trees need wind to grow properly. When the wind blows, it bends the tree, which tugs at the roots on the windward side and compresses the wood on the other side. In response, the root system expands to provide a firmer anchor where it is needed, and the compressed wood cells change their structure to become stronger and firmer. Trees that are exposed to strong winds early in life become trees that can withstand even stronger winds when full grown. Conversely, trees that are raised in protected greenhouse environment sometimes fall over their own weight before they reach maturity. A few pages later, Haidt continues. Like young trees exposed to wind, children who are routinely exposed to small risks grow up to become adults who can handle much larger risks without panicking. Conversely, children who are raised in a protected greenhouse sometimes become incapacitated by anxiety before they reach maturity. So here's the question this chapter forced me to ask myself, and that we should all ask ourselves. Where, in our love for our children, might we be blocking the wind they actually need to grow? That's not an easy question, but it might be one of the most important ones we'll ever face as parents. Risky play is not recklessness. It's how kids develop courage. Climbing a tree, walking to the store alone, having an argument with a friend. Something happens inside that can't be learned any other way. The child's nervous system learns the difference between danger and discomfort. And without that lesson, everything feels dangerous. But when we let them endure the tough stuff, every scraped knee is a message. I fell, and I can get back up. Every moment they spend unsupervised whispers back to them, I can handle this. And every single risk they survive turns into a shield against anxiety. Every time we let them face the hard things, they don't become fragile, they become fortified. Each experience becomes a layer of armor they carry into the world, especially, and most importantly, long after mom and dad are no longer around to protect them. So while we're overprotecting them in the physical world, we handed children unrestricted access to the digital world. So here's the smartphone adoption curve for U.S. teens from around 2010 through today, based on Pew Research Center benchmarks. In 2011, less than a quarter of teens had a smartphone. By 2015, roughly 3/4 did. By 2018-19, by today, 95% of teens have a smartphone or access to a smartphone. 19 out of 20 teenagers. That's not a trend. That's today's world. We didn't just give them a tool. We gave them a 24/7 evaluation machine and asked their still-forming minds to survive it. For teenagers, a smartphone isn't neutral. It's a mirror they can't look away from, a scoreboard that never closes, and a crowd that never stops watching. And for a lot of kids, we handed it to them before they even started to form their own identity. And as a father, what we're about to walk through shocked my entire system. And I'll own my part in it. I dropped the ball with my eldest, my 13-year-old. I did. I gave her the phone. And I want to share a cliche we've all heard. There are lies, there are white lies, and then there are statistics. But with this, here's the uncomfortable truth. These statistics are not lying. They're telling us something we didn't want to name. And when I look at these facts, I see it with absolute clarity, like a laser. Handing my daughter a smartphone wasn't freedom. It was abandonment, disguised as trust. Every like is a verdict. Every silence is a rejection. Every scroll, a comparison, merciless and unrelenting. So what suffers? Sleep, focus, sometimes even self-worth. And not because teens are weak, but because the human nervous system wasn't designed for this. So when we limit phones, when we delay social media, we're not controlling our kids. We're saying, your mind deserves peace. Your worth is not negotiable. You don't have to perform to be cool. In his research, Haidt points out that a growing share of teens are spending what amounts to a full work week or more on social media. By 2023, nearly half of teens report being online almost all the time. And that's why he calls it the Great Rewiring of Childhood. A teenager's job is to ask, who am I? Social media answers, how do you rank? So as boys and girls were pulled into different digital worlds, they were both pulled out of the real one. And what they lost wasn't just time. They lost free play, the very experiences that teach resilience, confidence, and self-trust. In the year 2000, nearly 3/4 of teens regularly engaged in free, unstructured play, being outside, figuring things out, managing conflict, taking small risks. But fast forward to today, and that number is closer to 3 in 10. 30% of kids are outside playing for free. And that's not because they wanted to stop being independent. It's because we stopped allowing it. We removed the experiences that build confidence, resilience, and social skills. And when we removed real-world competence, anxiety rushed in to fill the gap. So I want to read another passage from Jonathan's book. So this is social scientist Alison Gopnik. She wrote a book called The Gardener and the Carpenter. And Gopnik says that parents began to think like carpenters who have a clear idea in mind of what they are trying to achieve. They look carefully at the materials they have to work with, and it is their job to assemble those materials into a finished product that can be judged by everyone against clear standards. Are the right angles perfect? Does the door work? Our job as parents is not to make a particular kind of child. Instead, our job is to provide a protected space of love, safety, and stability in which children of many unpredictable kinds can flourish. Our job is not to shape our children's minds. It's to let those minds explore all the possibilities that the world allows. Our job is not to tell children how to play. It's to give them toys. We can't make children learn, but we can let them learn. Many of us have adopted an over-controlling carpenter mentality, which prevents our children from flourishing. At the same time, we have underprotected our children in the virtual world by leaving them to their own devices and failing to do much weeding at all. We let the internet and social media take over the garden. We have left young people to grow up in the digital social networks rather than communities where they can put down roots. And then we are surprised that our children are lonely, starving for real human connections. It's really scary, huh? Now let's see what the research tells us about mental health for teenagers during the same time the teen smartphone saturation. Based on data collected from the CDC from 2011 to 2021, for teenagers who felt sad or hopeless. For boys, it went from 21 to 29%. And for girls, it went from 36 to 57%. So nearly 3 out of 10 boys and nearly 6 out of 10 girls felt sad or hopeless. And how about major depression? First, let's define it, according to the World Health Organization. Major depression is a medical condition in which a person's mood, motivation, and ability to function are persistently impaired for weeks or longer, beyond normal emotional ups and downs. What makes it major? It's not normal. It's not regular sadness, stress, or a bad week. It is persistent, pervasive, and impairing. It affects how a person thinks, feels, behaves, and functions. So let's look at this graph, U.S. teens with major depression. Notice something here? Nothing dramatic happens until around 2010, 2012. Then look at the facts. Depression and anxiety more than double. Boys went from 5% to 12%. Girls with major depression, 13% to 29%. Same patterns in the United States across the entire developed world, Canada, the UK, Australia. The list of countries goes on and on. Smartphones didn't just coincide with the teen mental health crisis. They changed the environment with which developing brains are growing, and the outcomes changed according. The outcomes changed in kind. This new environment changed everything. Before 2012, the line barely moves. And today, more than half of teen girls report persistent sadness or hopelessness. That kind of change doesn't come from kids. It comes from the environment. By age 13, 90 to 95% of kids have a smartphone. Average screen time, 7 to 9 hours a day for some cases. This isn't a gradual decline. This is a cliff. Now we're going to look at this graph. It's about self-harm and suicide trends based on CDC public health patterns, with the year 2000 as the baseline. A 300% increase in self-harm and nearly a 75% increase in teen suicides. You don't accidentally triple self-harm in a healthy environment. And then this graph, suicide rates among youth and young adults aged 10 through 24. As of today, January 2026, there are roughly 43 million teenagers in the U.S. And we ran these numbers because a graph can hide the human cost. Translating this research into real lives means this. Comparing 2001 and 2021, there are more than 1,750 additional teen deaths by suicide every single year. This is not a trend. It's more than 1,750 empty chairs at the dinner table every single night, every single year. Another 1,750 families whose lives are permanently split into before and after. This didn't happen because teenagers changed. It happened because the world we handed them did. And when we talk about teen suicide, we're talking about a final irreversible outcome. In the last decade, rates of self-harm among teens have risen by 300%. That doesn't happen overnight. No child wakes up one morning and suddenly arrives at the edge of the cliff. There's always a road leading up to it, made of small daily changes that are easy to overlook. The question isn't only how many lives we've lost. The deeper question is, what changed in everyday life long before the crisis? And one of the earliest, quietest, and most ignored changes is this: our children stopped getting the healthy sleep they need for their developing brains. Check out this graph on teen sleep deprivation, 2000 versus 2023. It shows the percentage of teens sleeping less than 8 hours on school nights. This is according to CDC Youth Risk Behavior Metrics. In the year 2000, 60% of teens are sleep deprived. That's a lot of kids, but look at this. 2023, 77% of teens are sleep deprived. That's a 17-point increase, not just in percentages, but in teenager exhaustion. Millions more kids don't get a healthy amount of sleep. And sleep loss doesn't stay in the bedroom. It shows up as depression, as anxiety, as emotional volatility. Phones didn't just steal attention, they stole sleep. And now this graph on the gender divide. This chart reflects consistent trends reported by Pew Research and Common Sense Media. The exact hour counts vary by year, but the pattern does not. And the pattern tells a story. When we break down the data by gender, the picture sharpens. Because boys and girls are growing up in the same digital world, but they are not living the same digital experience. And that difference matters, because it explains why the crisis looks different for boys than it does for girls. Let's first look at teen girls. Their gaming barely moves, but after 2010, their social media use doesn't just rise, it skyrockets. This is a world of constant comparison, perfect bodies, perfect lives, endless social evaluation. And the psychological cost shows up as anxiety, depression, and relentless body image distress. Now look at teen boys. Social media rises, but slowly. Gaming dominates. This is a world of escape, immersion, and reward without responsibility. And the damage looks different. Withdrawal, apathy, gaming dependency, a total collapse of motivation. Same phones, same apps, same platforms, but a completely different exposure, which means completely different psychological outcomes. This isn't random, and it's not a mystery. It's what happens when developing nervous systems are shaped by algorithms instead of real life. Everything we've walked through today gave me a gut check as a father, especially when I thought about my 13-year-old daughter. I gave her that phone. I had to face a hard truth. Sometimes loving a child means willing to be disliked so you can protect them for tomorrow. Unlimited access isn't trust. It's asking children to parent themselves in a world they are not yet equipped to handle. When I read this book, it forced me to take action. I knew I needed to set boundaries. I know my decision in my house is not going to be popular. To delay access to the technology that everyone else has around her, everyone seems to have, to choose guidance over convenience. It means I had to reclaim my role, not as her friend, but as my daughter's father. And my job as dad isn't to make her childhood easier. My job as her father is to prepare her for adulthood. And I had to be honest with myself. I had to admit that the smartphone had been the way of doing that as well as I should. So what do we do now? No panic, no guilt, no perfection. We lead. We delay phones. We restore play. We allow risk. We protect sleep. We give responsibility. We tolerate discomfort, ours and theirs, because growth has always required courage. Jonathan Haidt says if we all come together, we can change this. He has 4 standards that if we can embrace them, if we can share them, if we can hold each other to the same standard, we can raise the standards for all of our children together. So 1, no smartphones before high school. 2, no social media before 16. 3, phone-free schools. And 4, far more unsupervised play and childhood independence. And I'll say it this way. As brothers and sisters in one human family who care about the future for our children, let's join forces with other parents, with community leaders, with leadership in our middle schools, in our churches. Most principals and teachers already know the phones are a problem. It's not going to be hard to convince them. What they're waiting for is us. Clear, focal, united parental support. And here's the good news. When families move together, when we delay smartphones and restore independence, this doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like relief. Shared standards lower resistance, rebuild trust, strengthen community, and give our kids back something they desperately need. Freedom in the real world, not on a screen. Once you see this science, you don't get to unsee it. And that means we don't get the luxury of waiting. We have to act. There's no ambiguity here. This isn't left versus right. This isn't politics. It's truth. It isn't about going backward. It's about going human. And if we bring a normal childhood back to earth, kids will rise. They always do. Family is sacred. It's where attitudes are born, habits are formed, character is shaped, and values are passed on. Our children don't need perfection. They need our presence, our patience, and our example. How we live today becomes the legacy they carry tomorrow. Let's live with a commitment to being the best parents we can be for our children.